Okay, so we're looking at talking a little bit about how you can analyze a property and how we analyze a property and some of the processes that happen along the way in the ADU world. So we're looking at right now a project with one of our multifamily clients that we're working with now. This property is just north of downtown Los Angeles in one of these kind of up and coming hipster neighborhoods, which is a specialty for this company. They buy old buildings, totally redo them, re-up them into this hipster kind of rental style and rent them out at really, really good money. So now they also discovered with the ADU they've got another option, and that is to add more units. Everybody likes that idea. So we're looking at this property, and what are the most important things to look for when analyzing for an ADU? Number one rule, is there room for an ADU? That seems pretty simple, but it's just kind of, that's the starting point. So looking at this property, this is utilizing one of our most important and intelligent analysis tools. It's called Google Maps. But it's so spectacular. Now you can go to any property, look into it, spin it around, do it in 3D. I mean, it's just absolutely remarkable what you can do from outer space now. Not only that, most people are not aware of this, but it also has a measurement tool built into it. You go to any Google map, you're looking at it, you right-click your mouse, a little menu pops up. One of them is measure. You click on that, and you can actually then put your cursor anywhere on there and measure anything from outer space. So in this property, I looked at it, did a measurement on it, and that backyard is about 45 by 45 square. So we've got lots of room to work with in the back. When you're looking at that highlighted area, you can probably see, not too clearly, but there's a one-story garage structure on the very back of the lot, which is very typical for these kind of small apartment buildings. And in this instance, we're actually just going to completely knock that down and then build our 2 by right new ADU detached in back of this building. So that's the way this particular one's going to go. So analyzing to see if there's room for it, and then just looking at the dynamic of the neighborhood, what the parking situation looks like. One of the cool things that is happening and is part of the whole ADU concept, and the no parking thing, is people are going, well, that's kind of crazy. Where are all those people going to park? Well, the reality is, in our society, things are changing, and they're changing very quickly right now. The youngest generation right now is the first generation that actual car ownership is going down, and it's going down fast. Does that mean people are not driving in cars? Not as much, because they're also doing healthier means of transport, bicycles and scootering and all that stuff. But the reality is, it's an economic decision mostly. Now, people starting out are looking at the cost of buying and maintaining a car versus just pushing a button on their phone and a magic car appears and takes them wherever they want to go. Well, for a lot of people, it's less expensive to do it that way in their life, where they are at this point in their life anyway. So they don't need to own a car. And a lot of the tenants of this company, as I talked about, they rent to primarily this hipster crowd. They've already found that a lot of their tenants already didn't have cars. So that parking space was just completely meaningless. So being able to convert that now into rental generating space is a radically positive thing. And you're going to find that there's going to be a lot less resistance to it, that idea, than ever before. And it's just going to continue in that direction. So that's some of the most important aspects of looking at the property from a perspective and analysis. So now we're continuing to look at this same property, and now we're looking at the floor plan of it. And this company is really smart. So they found a way to, of course, maximize the return they get based on the square footage that they're going to have to build. So, and you've already seen apartment buildings, apartment units are just getting smaller and smaller. And that trend is also going to continue, which is a combination because pricing forces us to do that, because we have to try to keep it as affordable as possible. But also there's a kind of a more of a minimalist and tiny home movement that just is really building in time now. And people are realizing that sometimes less is more. And so that's really just starting to become being reflected in architecture more and more. So in this particular duplex, they've got this down where they've got 3-bedroom, 3-bath unit in each unit. And they got that all crammed into, believe it or not, 840 square feet. And yet these units will feel very good when people are in them. So this is a duplex that they created in the elevations. So this gives us an opportunity to, talk about the opportunity once again. And you can make a boatload of money doing this. And you want to know why? It's really simple. Free land. That's right. The government just gave you an opportunity to build an income-producing property on free land. So when you're computing the ROI, a 10-year-old could do this now because it's very simply, it's the cost of construction versus the rent it'll generate. It's the cost of construction versus the equity value it'll create. That's it. There is no land cost involved in it because you already own the land. It's already spoken for. That's where the ADU concept cannot miss. You could build your ADU, you could make every mistake on it you could possibly think of, and when you're done, it's still going to be a home run because of that. There's no land cost. And what is the biggest cost of any investment property? The land. The land, particularly in Southern California. Our dirt is really expensive. So when you take that out of the equation, the numbers just are astronomical. So here's a simple rule that you can use. And I know this crowd we're talking to, a lot of people already know about this rule, but not really, because this rule doesn't apply in Los Angeles. And it's the 1% rule. And it simply states that if your monthly rent equals 1% or less of your cost of the investment, then it's going to be a home run. 1% basically means a 12% return on your money. Well, that's fantastic, but that doesn't exist in Los Angeles because our land is so expensive. You're never going to see a return like that. You can in some areas of the country, in some cities, but that is also going to typically be in much lower cost things. So there's the percentage thing, and then there's the dollar thing. And those are sometimes two different things to consider. But in the 1% rule, if you can do the 1% rule, you're going to have a home run. And this property I picked out exactly matches that. Now, another part of the home run is going to be in the equity value it creates. So using, once again, this property as an example, in this area, the GRM, the gross rent multiplier for a B plus A minus building would be 11.5. So using that metric, this property, based on this cost of $300,000 per unit, will deliver a projected value of $414,000 per unit. It's going to cost, on the high end, $300,000 a unit to build, and it's going to generate a projected value of $414,000. That's a pretty impressive thing. And this is kind of a cool thing to consider when you're talking about the rental world and this GRM thing. When you build an ADU, of course, that's going to be brand new construction. So regardless of the area you're building, whatever is the standard rent for that area, this is going to deliver you the best in class version of that rent because it's going to be brand new construction. It's going to be built, well, hopefully if you build it right, it's going to be built with all the modern things that appeal to the market that we're in right now. And that is going to give you the highest potential rent that you can get out of that particular development. And it's going to be brand new. So not only is it going to deliver you the highest rent, it's also going to be the easiest to rent. So it's going to give you the highest vacancy factor. So it's a win-win in that regard. So this is really where I get excited, because this is an opportunity for people to take an asset that they already have or an asset they're considering buying. And now there's a whole nother layer of investment opportunity that they can generate out of the same property. And you get to do it on free land. So this is the home run part.
Seth, I've got a question.
Sure.
So would you say from your past deals or current projects you're working on, is there a type of build, let's say manufactured or from the ground up, stick built? Is there a more common method if you have that free land, let's say it's an SFR with a large backyard?
Yeah, and that's also a very good question, because there are many ways that you can create an ADU. Of course, the simplest one is to do a garage conversion. However, that isn't anywhere as near as simple as most people think. And this is where the garage discussion starts to come apart. Remember that once again, I'm using the city of Los Angeles as a reference. Most of the garages in California were built as garages in the early 1900s. Well, if you're going to make that into an ADU, that ADU now has to conform to all modern building and safety codes. And that structure was built for cars, 80 years ago. It's just not the same thing. So there's very little out of an existing garage that can actually apply to this new modern building standard. In most cases, I would say, you're probably better off just knocking it down and building new anyway. But regardless, what do you build on it? Now, stick built is still going to be the majority of how these things are built, because particularly in the applications of ADU, you're having to squeeze this structure into a very confined space. You only have so much space to work with in a backyard. And so to just physically fit it, that's going to kind of limit you architecturally. And then that is also going to limit you then in terms of the product type. However, that said, factory built housing, modular housing, all these different terms for these new kinds of building technologies, they are the future of construction. They're coming, and they're coming fast. If you think about it, it's just absolutely absurd that housing of all kinds is still built the exact same way it was basically since caveman days, where you get a group of people together on a piece of dirt somewhere and you start swinging hammers and building it on the dirt. Well, they built cars that way in the beginning too, but they stopped that over 100 years ago. Most things, especially complex things, are built in factories where there's a controlled environment and all kinds of advantages and efficiencies happen. Not the housing industry, but that's changing. And there are many options right now for ADUs in that world. And I work with all of those companies and can also be a resource for you in that. I really believe in it. I want it because I don't like being in the construction world any more than I have to. It's a pain in the butt. Contractors are a pain in the butt. Sorry if there's any out there right now. But it's just the whole industry is so weird. It's just a bunch of wildcatters, and it's like herding cats. It's so hard to manage those processes. And having that all happen in a factory somewhere where I don't have to worry about it, count me in every time. And so there are some options there in that kind of product type right now.
Awesome. I have a question if you got a second.
Sure.
It's actually kind of a two-part question. The first part would be for Mike. Second part's for you, Seth. So I've got a rental, and that rental has a detached garage in the back, and I want to turn it into an ADU. So Mike, you guys being a private lender, is that something that you could lend me the capital for me to get done? And if so, Seth, what's my first step? Where do I start on that process? I've already made the decision I want the ADU, then what? So Mike, if you could kind of lead me into that.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and it's common actually within our office. So a rental property where, let's just assume you have current tenants paying rent and you have this extra land that you want to develop the ADU. The short answer is yes, we would lend to that. How we would do it, that's a longer um, answer, and we can get into that down the road. But for a lot of our borrowers, we've been able to deploy dollars more of a cash out refi structure, or in any case too, if you're buying a property to create a rental, we could do more of an improvement loan. And so with the improvement loan, we can typically deploy, let's say up to 80% or 70 to 80% of the purchase price, but we can also stack on up to 100% of the improvement cost. And so allocating the dollars towards the ground up construction, or if it's a manufactured property, it doesn't really make much of a difference for us. Just as long as you're adding that value, that's really how we're going to underwrite it in our office.
Awesome. Thank you. So now that I've got my dollars squared away, Seth, what's my first move? What do I do next?
Well, certainly, matter of fact, that kind of ties into one of my next slides here. So I'll
Perfect.
answer in just a second. So the numbers sound great, right? So now you're ready to build, but what should you build? Well, this is a really good question. And the thing that to keep in mind here is that, in answer to your question, is this is a really complicated process. So yes, you can in fact do all of that stuff yourself, but do you really want to learn the mistakes by making them? And for most people, that's a no. So I would recommend, regardless of whether it's our company or another company, that you certainly get qualified people to help you with this construction business. But we are in this business, and we are consultancy, but we offer everything from just consultant services all the way through assisting you all the way through turnkey construction, handing you the keys and everything in between. So that's the architectural, the engineering, the expediting, then the actual, all of the site prep work, and then the full-on construction of the unit, all of that stuff. And it is a complicated process, but done right, then it's so pays, because it's like everything, you pay for what you get. And because you're making this as an investment, and for the majority of people out there, at least in the rental world, they're more long-term investors. You want to build something that is going to be sturdy and is going to require the least amount of maintenance as you go along. So we offer any of these services for you. And our first step in the process is that anybody that's got a property, and as I said at the beginning, and I'm saving it for the end, we're not quite at the end, but I'm going to tell you about it right now. Our first part of the process would be, when a customer calls us, is that I would first do a desktop review of their property for them, and we usually charge $250 for that. And for all of the people that are on our webinar today, we're gonna offer that to you for free. So if you have any property that you want us to talk to you about, whether you own it now or something you're thinking about buying, call me up and we'll do that analysis for you and put that together. Then the next part of that process would be that we would offer a feasibility report. This is a radically more detailed report that we put together, and we actually send out architect or draftsperson to go out and actually measure everything about the property, analyze everything about the property, analyze all of the legal jurisdiction things that apply on that particular property in that location. And then we will be able to then tell you what's the maximum opportunities you have on the property. Based on that information, then you tell us what you want to build on the property. And then we would put together a specific proposal based on that, including a architectural floor plan and elevations of what that product would actually look like on your land, along with a bid from the architect and engineer that put that together for what the full cost of putting the full package together of all the architectural and engineering drawings and paperwork that would be required to submit it for a permit with the city of Los Angeles, along with the cost of the expediting of that through the city, an exact number of what that'll cost, along with an estimate of what the actual building cost would be to construct it. Then, if you want to move forward with us, then the architect would put together those plans and the engineering, and we'd take it through the city and get it to what's called RTI, ready to issue. And then at that point, then we would go into the next phase where we would invite 2 to 3 of the contractors we work with to all independently build on the construction of that unit. And you wait till that point, because until they're actually looking at a set of approved plans, they don't know exactly what they're going to build. So they can't give you an exact price. They can give you an estimate. And that's why we give the estimate in front. But to get the exact price, which they can put into a contract they can guarantee the price of, they have to have actual ready to issue plans to base those bids on. So we bring out several of them so they know they're bidding against other contractors to get the best price for the client. Then the client picks which contractor they want. They hire that contractor, they build it, and then if they're working with one of the contractors we recommend, we will receive a referral from them. And we built a very, very transparent system so everybody knows what everybody's getting paid for doing what in the process. And we charge 5 to 8% depending on the size of the project. The bigger the project, the smaller the percentage is, because the work is relatively fixed depending, it doesn't vary that much depending on the size of the project. So we charge 5% on the low end. The contractor agrees to pay us that as a referral fee. What that is really in effect is they're paying for us to stay on and provide a whole nother level of oversight through the entire construction process all the way to the end. So we basically, that pays us to work for the consumer and making sure that the contractor is doing what they said they were going to do, when they said they were going to do it. And of course, making sure that everything is being done right to take advantage of all of the ADU options specifically that apply to that opportunity. So the contractor is paying for our service to work for the client. And everybody knows what everybody's getting paid, because in this construction world, there's so much under the table stuff going on. It's sickening. It really is. I resent it. I don't like it. And I don't work that way. And I don't work with contractors that work that way. So they either work our way or we don't recommend them. And the people that we do work with, this ADU thing is being so successful now that all of the contractors that we're working with, they're basically just working for me now, because we're sending them all the business they can handle. I'm also very careful to not send them more business than they can handle, because they will always take more business, regardless of their ability to actually properly services it. And this is a very common gripe with people in contractor world. The contractor says they'll have it done in X time, and they always take longer. They take longer not because they're working slow necessarily, but because they're spread too thin. They're trying to cover too many projects at the same time. So that's our process on that.